Hey everyone, Dented Recruit here. I wanted to show you how I do my glazing technique to get these lights to darks. These are the tools that I use to do my paintings. I have a dropper, my nice little flat brush, another dry brush, and my paint scooper. These are what I use on a smaller model. I'm doing salamanders, so using moot green as my highlight, and just scoop that out of the pot. Use your dropper to get a nice bit of water that you can just chuck down and get a hefty scoop on your brush. Then you just mix it in. You can see it's very watery, but when we go and actually drag it across that white surface, you can see that it does leave a thin layer. With the paint prepped correctly, we can start glazing onto the model now. To glaze, we're just going to be lightly pulling the brush from the back to the point where you want it to be brightest. You can choose where you want to have your highlights, but for me, I like to do the edges of panels. It is thin coverage and you need to wait for each layer to dry before you apply the next, or you'll wipe off the paint that you've just put down and it becomes patchy. That's why I do a lot of edges at the same time. This is a large model, but it works the exact same with smaller ones using those smaller tools that I mentioned before. Now that I've showed you the technique that I use for my glazing, let's speed this up and show you what I actually do as my first step, which is dry brush that color on to get a nice starting gradient on those edging panels where I want that paint to go. And don't worry if it looks a bit powdery, because we will glaze over the top of it and that gets rid of it. Now look at how great our model looks. So fast, just from the start, always looked like that. Okay, but yeah, so now we're coming back in with our glazing. Imagining the dry brush is our first step, we begin to glaze here with that highlight moot green. Slowly build these layers and moving the brush closer towards the edge each time, looking to build up that gradient quite nicely from the outside down to the darker part on the edge. Once you're happy, grab your second tone. This one I use is the Warpstone Green. Same as before, pop it down, drop your water and mix it in. I'm doing a large model, so this is a lot more paint than I would normally be putting down at once. I find if you leave these paints out for too long in that water, it has a weird white cast that it applies over the paint when it dries. I usually will put a little amount of paint on my palette to start and just reapply as I need. So with your mid-tone, we're just going to be doing the opposite of what we did with the highlight. We're starting at the middle of the panel and pulling that darker color towards the base where we want the shadows to be. Going back over the top of this means we don't have to be too careful with where we put our light greens to start, and also creates a better gradient from that light to dark. We still need to be waiting for each layer to dry, so you can see with this dark color I'm going over some of those starter points on that tank where I've gotten a bit further ahead, but it was still a little bit splotchy on some of those end bits and a little bit too much of that gradient highlight, so I started pulling it back with the midtones. Some of the things as you go about doing this gradient is making sure that you're not removing your lowest shadow color, which for me is a really dark green. So I've got that in some of those base sections of the tank, and I'm just trying to be careful not to cover it up, otherwise I'll need to go over